What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Abe. This is EVE Online, and we're going to get into the combat career path here. I'm in a brand new character. I guess I should probably get some skills training. Um, let's see. Improve ship agility. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, all right. I'll just get those going right now just to, I don't know, make productive use of our time here, and we'll probably want weapon upgrades. Anyway, so that's got us going for the 24 hours. All right, so Aura popped up and suggested that I check out the combat career path. Much like most people who are starting the game, I have nothing. Um, if you click on this little icon here for fitting, it shows you your ship and what modules you have on it. You've got this, they've basically given you the bare bones, right? So you've got a gun, you've got a mining laser, which you can't fire at anything other than asteroids, and you you've got a civilian afterburner, and these are all civilian class modules. Excuse me, man, my lunch is catching up to me. All right, so let's see what the combat career path has in store for us as a totally new pilot. So I've only got the one ship, very weak, with one Gatling autocannon, but all right, so we click on the top one. We opened up our agency as we were instructed. Now there are a bunch of career path agents that we can go check out, and I've got a bunch of videos elsewhere in my channel here if you want to see how to navigate through those. I went through it as a Galente class, and so there were a lot of drones being used. This time through, if I do the career path agents again, it will be with a Minmatar, and so we'll have to use projectile weapons, and it'll be good to get into that. So, but anyway, to start with, we're going to go through their prepared combat career path. There are 16 tasks or missions, and we just click on the top one, activate it, and it says, all right, need to undock. And we can do that, and it will teach us some, looks like navigating to your target. Okay, so I undocked by clicking on that button in the upper right corner. The agency is still up. Aura is chatting over my agency, so I guess I can put this over here. There's no reason that you need to keep your ship in sight or look at it, other than that it's probably one of the more interesting things you can look at in the game while you're flying around. So let's see. When you're ready to begin your first mission, warp to the training site by clicking Warp to on the info panel under the training tab. So either here, so I can maybe click on that. Yep, and that will activate my warp. If I click over here, there's a big button that says Warp to, and either of those would have worked in this situation. So your ship, in order to enter warp, you can't be attacked while you're in warp. But in order to enter warp, you need to align or direct your ship, and it will do it on its own. It'll point towards where you're about to fly to or warp to, and then once it reaches, I think it's like 75 or 80% of your maximum velocity, it will then engage and enter warp. So, all right. Captain, my scanners indicate enemies in the area. Our mission is to eliminate them. Orbit an enemy, lock the target, and activate turrets to destroy. All right, so if you hold down Control and left click on the targets over here, it'll target them. Another way to do it is if you see them in space, you can hold down Control and left click and target there. If you select another one, you can click the icon here on the little target window, and that will lock the target as well. So there are a variety of different ways to do almost everything. Generally, you want to orbit something or orbit your target or be moving during combat. And the faster you are, the harder you are to hit. So I've decided to orbit this Circadian Seeker. It's got their distance from me here at 1,500, 1,200, less than 1,000 meters. And they have a bounty. So when we kill them, we will get that money. But all of our bounties don't get paid out instantaneously. They get paid out one at a time, or once every 20 minutes. So it'll just accumulate. So I activated my gun because my shields are starting to take a hit here. Your shields are this outer sort of half ring. The middle ring is your armor, and the inner ring is the hull of your ship. You don't want to get as a shield tanker, which we learned when we selected Minmatar. Minmatars are shield tankers. Once you get into armor and hull, you end up having to pay to repair that because you probably don't have armor repairs equipped on your ship. So it's not terribly expensive, but it's a cost you'll want to avoid. So generally speaking, if you are a shield tanker, you'll probably want to keep your shields, you know, as high as possible to prevent the off chance that you just take a high dose of damage and it ends up like injuring you to the point of needing repairs. So I'll clear these out, and one by one I just have to select which target I've locked, and they'll be lined up here, and then either hit F1, and you can see up in the right corner of the box that comes up here, if I hit F1, that'll activate the gun, and hitting it again will deactivate it. So if you hover over your weapon or your whatever you've got down here, it'll give you some information about it. This tells me I'm doing 4.1 damage per second. It tells me what, like, the range I should ideally be at. You want to try to, generally speaking, you want to be as close to your optimal range or under as possible. There are, as with everything in EVE Online, there are always exceptions to this, and in particular with projectile weapons, autocannons have an unreasonably small optimal range. Anyway, a lot of detail, but we don't need to get into that right now. So we finished the first little mission here. We can replay it if we really want, and it looks like we've completed that. So I'm just going to do these first 3 in this video, and then we can jump and do the second 3 in the next video. So I'll click on 1A. Just by killing those 3 ships ended the mission. All right, so my shields are very slowly regenerating, and you can see I've activated the percentage just to see what my percentage is, and also hovering over it tells you that as well. So we'll left click on 1A, seek and destroy. We'll activate it, and then this time we will hit the warp 2 button over here, and the ship will turn itself, align to where it needs to go, and then you can see this little line on the bar here. Once our speed reaches that, then we enter warp, and there you go. Bailey girl, hey. I've got a couple dogs, and they are often in the room while I'm recording, so you may hear slurping noises. They're enjoying life, or barking and tussling as they're playing with each other. It's the spice of life. Alright, so different ships warp at different speeds. It's not something that'll impact your gameplay very much at the very beginning, so don't worry too much about it, but it's good to know. Destroy all waves of enemy targets to complete this task. Alright, so again, I'm going to hold down Control, left click on the overview or the enemy in the overview, and they're red. I'll orbit them, turn on my afterburner, and I can either left click on this to start my gun, or you know, I could hit F1 like we did before. Now, if you pay attention, the damage numbers scroll by up here, and you'll see little icons next to the damage numbers. And that tells you what type of damage you are doing or taking, right? So the blue numbers are the damage you're doing, the red numbers are the damage you're taking. And these little icons next to the blue numbers is kinetic and explosive. And again, if I hover over my gun, that you see the same icons, 3 hit points of kinetic damage, and that's what that little gray icon is, and then 4 hit points of the explosive icon, and that's what that is. So alright, so we're going to target these. Whoop, normally I want to be, let's get in range. And yeah, so if you have if you're facing enemies that you weren't anticipating, this would be a good way to know how to protect yourself against them, is reading pretty quickly, if you can, the icons next to the damage that they're dealing, right? So this little thing looks like steam. That means you're taking heat damage. So if I had a way to protect myself specifically from heat damage, then I would activate it, and I'd sort of become safer for me to fight these. Alright, so I'm within range now, and I can just zoom out, pan around, see where everything is. If you want, you can catch a different view, a more tactical view, I think is what it's called. Tactical camera. And that shows you the distance that everything is away from you. So everything is very close, so it's not quite as useful, but this is like 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers. All right, we need to orbit them. And you can see there's a hotkey next to everything that you hover over for the most part, right? So if I want to orbit something, once I've gotten it selected, I can hit W and it orbits. I've got a default orbit range. I can change that manually between 500 and 1,000,000, and that's meters. So if you wanted to orbit it like 10,000 or 10 kilometers, you would have to type in 10,000. All right. I'm going to orbit. Yeah. All right. I can only manage to target 3 targets in this ship at a time. So there is a 4th ship that will have to wait until I've killed one and cleared that target slot. So if I zoom out, you can see this little white dot shows distance-wise how far away it is. So these 2 ships are about 10,000 kilometers away. And the little blue lines, you can see this shorter blue line. This shows where you're immediately pointing at that moment. The longer blue line shows where you're supposed to be going or where you're headed. And this little blue circle shows what your orbit trajectory will take you on. It sounds terribly complicated, but I've done nothing. All I did was tell it to orbit it, and then it did it on its own. And unfortunately, it would be nice if you could control, what angle your orbit ring sits at with relation to your enemy. There are times where that would be very handy, but they don't have that in the game, and I doubt they'll add it. So don't worry too much about it. It's literally just, I hit W to orbit. Okay, so it looks like I have to hold down W and then I click the target that I want to orbit. So it's not as simple as just having it selected already. I have to get back and do it. I'll be honest, I've never really never used the hotkey for orbit. I always just hit the orbit button and go from there. So these guns have a very short range, and as you can see, as I was getting further away from one of the ships that I was up against, I just wasn't able to do anything. So I need to keep it at least, when you're at the fall-off range, your accuracy is about half of what it could be. So you hit 50% of your shots. Under that and closer to your optimal range, you will be hitting more and more closer to 100%. Now, just because of all the different factors that go into it and that impact or influence this, your accuracy will likely never be 100%, but something to keep in mind. All right, I think this is the last wave. I'm not sure. Let's see, destroy all waves of enemy targets. Come on, get in there. Got my afterburner on. Now we can look at the target if we want. And so instead of watching ourselves, we can watch them. And watch them take damage, which is kind of neat. All right. And we got one more. As you get further into the game and you sort of become accustomed to the user interface and understanding what different icons mean, you'll be able to tell what size or what type of ship you're going up against just by the type of icon that this is. So this is a cruiser, and that's like the 3rd or 4th largest ship. The smallest ship is the one I'm in right now, which is, I think, a corvette. And then frigates, and then cruisers, or frigates, destroyers, cruisers, battle cruisers, battleships, and so on and so forth. Now, this combat career path the enemies are very squishy. So you see how much smaller I am than this ship? With the weapons I have available to me, I should not be able to kill a cruiser dealing 4 damage, every second or something like that. It just shouldn't be possible. But because this is very much a tutorial and sort of an introductory lesson for the game itself. They pitch you up against things that you're going to be able to easily defeat. So on one hand, don't feel too overconfident, and on the other hand, don't feel too threatened, because yeah, it's just, it's here to teach you some of the mechanics. All right, so that's 1A is done. Looks like we made a little bit of money with that. We'll do 1B, and we'll activate it and warp to it, much the same way as we did before. And so again, we could have clicked over here to warp to location. I'm not doing this, and this isn't a terribly accurate representation of how you travel normally. Normally there are warp gates, stargates that you would use, and they would show up on your overview like this, and you would just right click and either jump or warp to, and that's how you travel. And then your route would be laid out up here, and you could either right click up here to do something similar. All right, destroy all waves of enemies present in the site. So again, I'll activate that, and I'll just target some of these ships and just get in there and try to do as much damage as possible. Now, I'm not hearing any gun noise. I suspect I may have changed that. Let's see. Yeah, I didn't turn off quieter weapon sounds, or turn on quieter weapon sounds, but at any rate, it can get old when you have a frequently repeating weapon, just hearing the rat-a-tat-tat of your guns over and over and over again. But if you happen to walk away from your computer, which is an ill-advised move playing EVE Online, you can hear when or if somebody starts to attack you. And you can probably also hear what kind of weapon they're using. So not too challenging. If you're dying and you're really struggling, don't worry about it. Don't feel bad. This isn't worth feeling bad about. It's a tutorial. They won't punish you too terribly. And if you do die, you will get a replacement ship, I think, outfitted much the same way as this one. So there's no way to sort of lose progress past this point. Once you get into more expensive ships, you should follow the rule never to fly what you can't afford to lose. But you never will drop below this class of ship with this type of equipment. So if you're going through these tutorials and it's your first time playing this game and you die, don't worry about it. Let's see here. Yeah, if you die during the tutorial, keep in mind that you'll probably pop out in your pod, which is a tiny little like escape pod basically. And if you just, right click on a square, which is a station, and dock, you will be offered a ship and you can go about finding it again in your inventory. It'll be it'll show up here under like ship bay or ship hangar, I think it's called. And you can just double click on it in that hangar and you will pop back into it and you can get back out here and try it again. So don't feel bad. It's a hard game, but it's fun if you give yourself a chance to learn some of the mechanics. And yeah, you can get as into or involved in the game and its mechanics as you would like. When I first made a bunch of videos for this combat career path, I went through and I had a battleship that I was flying for higher level missions, and it just happened to be the only combat ship I had available to me. And so I went out and I just blew through them, and I didn't think that was a very representative experience, so that's why I made this character and figured it would be good to yeah, I mean, show a realistic experience. You can see one of these ships is using, looks like both of them are using missiles on me. So you can see them firing. The tails. So even though it may seem, especially in a lot of games, that in a small ship you will not be able to take out larger ships, that's not necessarily the case in EVE Online. You can see that I'm moving pretty quickly. I mean, I'm not moving very quickly in as far as some of the ships in this game are concerned, but I'm keeping a pretty tight radius around this Circadian Seeker, and it makes it harder for them to hit me. So we'll get into that, I think, in part 3 here. But yeah, so that's part 1, and not a whole lot of complex stuff going on there, but there's a lot to learn. So thanks for watching, and catch me in the next video, and we'll go through part 2.